Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be making some Shopkins inspired cookies. This video is a collaboration with my YouTube friends who've also made lots of Shopkins inspired treats. You can click on the images on the screen now to see their videos, or you can also click on the links in the description box below. Right, let's get started. So we're starting with some little cookies. So I've just baked some gingerbread ones here. I'll put the recipe in the description box below. Now I've just used a round cutter for these. I've left some just plain round, and then for some of the others I've just used a little circular cutter to cut out a hole in the middle. So I used this size. Again, I'll put the links below, and you'll find when the cookie cuts and it grows a little bit, this circle will end up a little bit smaller than what you've used. So we're going to use some Renshaw's fondant. Now I've dyed this. You can buy some ready coloured, but I've dyed these ones. So this one's I've dyed a fuchsia, and this one I've dyed with a bit of apple green and then a tiny bit of kiwi colour mixed in with that. So we'll start actually with the pink one. We're just going to roll this out. Now if it sticks to your board, just dust your work surface with a little bit of corn flour. I'm using corn flour rather than icing sugar because it doesn't dry out my fondant, and icing sugar tends to dry out my fondant a little bit. So taking the cutter that we've used for the actual cookie, we're going to cut out a circle like that. Just make sure there's no jaggedy edges, just by running our finger along the edge. So what I'm going to do is, just using my cutter, I'm going to try and get this in the centre, hopefully, so that it'll meet with that one. Give that a go and see. Brilliant. So that goes roughly over there like that. Again, I'm just going to put my finger in the middle to get rid of any jaggedy edges. And what I'm going to do now is, just on one side, I'm just going to take a couple of little circles, or not circles, but just slight curves out using my little circle cutter. And I'm just going to run my finger along there, smoothing it off a little bit. This side of this bit we're just going to push in a little bit with our modelling tool, creating some little curved shapes. It's a couple more little lines in there like that. I'll just push that down a little bit. Oh, and I haven't actually stuck it on the biscuit properly yet, as I forgot. So we're just going to use a bit of royal icing now. I'm just going to use some that's ready-made just because it's quick and easy. I'm just taking a really small amount, and we're just going to put it on the cookie, like so. I find if I use buttercream to stick the fondant on with, it sometimes makes my cookie go a little bit soggy, you see, so I try and use royal icing instead. So what we're going to do now is just create some little feet for the front. So I'm just going to roll a small ball of my pink. I'm going to cut this in half, and we're just going to use these as the feet. So we're just going to push these on here, trying to get them as close to the bottom as you can. And then we're going to need some more pink for a little nose and a mouth. So for the nose, we just want a really tiny ball of pink. I'm just going to push that on about the middle, and I'm just going to smooth it on one side. And what we're going to do is roll two little teardrop shapes, push these together, and bring it up slightly at one side. I'm just going to put a little bit of water on below the nose where I'm going to stick it. And the tricky bit is picking it up and putting it on without squashing it. In fact, I might have to move my nose up a little bit to get my mouth on in there. Now we'll dust a little bit of colour around the edge. So I'm just going to use some edible rainbow dust. This is the strawberry one that I've got here. So it'll just give us a slightly darker colour around the edge. We're not going to use too much. Just dusting it on with a dry brush just around that very edge. Again, I'll put links below to all these materials that I'm using. Don't know if you can see, that's getting a little bit darker around the edge, a little bit on the feet. And if you want it to look like she's got highlights on as well, we'll just use a little bit of white, dusting it on near the top where the light would shine on her. We'll put a little bit down here. So once you're happy with your little highlights, we can move on to making a little face. We just want a bit of white now for our eyes. So we're going to roll this out. And we're just going to use our circle cutter. Just got a slightly smaller one now for creating two little eyes. So I've cut out my two little circles and we're just going to stick these on at either side of the nose. So I've squashed them down a little bit so they're slightly larger than they were when I've cut them out. Just make sure they stay in the nice rounded shape, so if you need to just use a tool to push them back to shape. So we're going to use a pale blue now for inside the eyes. So I've got a really pale blue that we're just going to roll out nice and thin, and we're just going to take the round cutter again and we're going to try and place this within the white that you've just put on. I'll just cut another one because it's easier if you can get it to stay in your cutter and then push it in place on there. So just a really small bit of black that we're going to need for the pupils. I'll roll two round balls, seeing if we can get them a similar size. I'm just going to squash them down a little bit like so, and then we're going to squash these into the blue bit, trying to get them roughly in the same place on each eye. Now we're going to put the black bit around for the eyelashes, so I'm just going to roll nice and thin some black. So once you've got a nice thin piece, we're just going to lay it around the edge of the eye. If it doesn't stick, just add a tiny bit of water around that edge bit and push it to. And I'm just going to snip it where it meets together, and then keeping the little lengths that you've got spare, we'll just cut some little eyelashes. So I'll cut off the point, and we want these little pieces, just tiny. So stick one at the top, and then we'll have a couple near the bottom. And you repeat that for the other one. So I'll do that in a minute, but what I'm going to do now is add a bit more colour to the eye. So I've got a blue food colouring, and I'm just going to mix it with a tiny bit of water, and we're just going to paint on this very edge. And then what we're going to do is add a bit more water to our brush, start to drag the colour in a little bit so that it becomes slightly more faint the further in we get. Just blending it in with your brush, keeping the darkest bit on the edge of that circle. And to finish off the eye, we're just going to put a small round ball of white, and we're just going to stick this in the corner there, just squashing it down a little bit like that. So that's one eye done. Just do the same for the other one. So I've done the same with the other eye, and now we're going to just add a bit of an indentation for some eyebrows. So just using your tool, or you can use a knife or even a cocktail stick. We're just going to indent a couple of little lines, just like that, nice and simple. Now we're going to add some little sprinkles. So I've dyed now my fondant in 3 different colours. I've got purple, yellow and blue. And we're just going to roll each one, and we're going to make the little sprinkles that go on it. So we're just going to roll a long thin piece, and we'll do the same with each one. If you've got sprinkles that you bought that are ready made, that's fine. I haven't got any sprinkles in, so I'm going to make my own. So while I'm giving those a few seconds to dry, we'll make some little hearts as well. Now my heart cutter's probably a little bit big, so we'll have to just create our own by hand. So we'll just make a tiny circle, roll it into a little bit of a teardrop shape, squash it down a tiny bit, and then we'll just push the modelling tool into the top like that to make a tiny little heart. And then we'll probably have to get it off our hand with the paintbrush. And then we'll pop that on. We'll make a few of those in different colours. So I've not stuck many hearts on, we're not going to have loads. And what I'm going to do is just cut my long strips into little pieces. We shouldn't need too many. So once you've got a few cut, we'll just stick them on. So I'll speed this up a little bit for you. So I'm going to place these randomly all the way around. So that's our delicious donut cookie done. And now on to the next one. So for our next one, I've taken the green fondant that I'd pre-dyed. And again, same as with the first one, we're going to cut out a circle. I'm going to smooth off the edges. Now, with it just being fondant, and it is quite soft today because it's quite warm, it stretches about quite a bit, so I'll reshape it a little bit when it's on the cookie. Again, a little bit of royal icing to stick it on. It can be a little bit flatter at the top for this one. That's fine. Now I'm going to draw a mouth in first, and I'm just going to create a bit of a line using the bottom of my modelling tool. So we're just going to push that in like that. It should create the shape for us. And then at the end of this mouth, we're just going to lengthen it just a tiny, tiny bit there. And then we'll add a small little line like so. And now we're going to give her a tiny, tiny nose, same as we did for the last one. Squash it down slightly at one side. I'm going to give this one some little arms in the same colour. I'm just going to roll 2 teardrop shapes. And we're just going to put these on at the sides. So that's one. And the next one, in fact, the next one we'll just cut a little bit off rather than having it a full teardrop shape. And we'll push that against the side. So again, we're going to use a bit of edible dust to make the edges a little bit darker. I've just got a holly green one here, which I'm hoping isn't going to be too dark. I'm just going to put it onto my kitchen paper this time and dab off the excess. And just lightly rub around the very edge. Just going to quickly give her some little feet. So I'm just pushing the little balls on like that. And we're going to darken her feet a little bit. And same as we did with the last one, we're going to add a bit of white for the highlights. And for this one, we're going to give her some rosy pink cheeks. So again, just using the edible pink, I'm just going to give her 2 little pink cheeks. So we're just going to give her a little worm friend. So I'm just going to use my tool up near the top, just put a bit of an indentation in like that. And we're going to add a little worm. We only need a small amount. So we're going to roll it just a little bit thicker at the top and a little bit thinner near the bottom. And we're just going to flatten this a little bit so that this will fit into our little indentation that we've made there. Put a little bit of water in there, ready for it to go in. And I'm just going to add some little lines now with my knife. A couple of things for the little eyebrows. And then what we'll do is we'll brush a bit of colour on. So same way as before, I've just got a bit of the pink. And we're just going to dust on the edges of our little worm. Making it darker at the bottom. Sorry, I think it's going out of focus. And what I'll do is we'll push that in place and then we'll give it some eyes. So just taking 2 small round balls, we're going to stick those on here. And then a smaller dot of black in each eye. And I'll make it look more like it's smiling. So we're going to do her eyes in the same way that we did the last one's eyes. So we've cut a round white circle, then we'll cut a round pale green circle, and then we're going to put the blacks in the eyes. We're also going to use the apple green this time for painting rather than the blue. And we're going to do the highlight and the eyelashes in the exact same way as we did before. Only this time we're going to put 2 highlights in. Also adding the eyebrows and finish with the lashes. So now we're just going to create some little leaves for the top of the head. If you've got cutters, you can just use cutters, but I'm going to create a teardrop shape that we're going to flatten down. Oops. Check the size of it against her head, so that's about the right size. And I'm just going to create some little indentations now with my tool. Like that. And again, I'm just going to brush a bit of green onto the edges of the leaf. And push that in place. So I've got one on there. I'm going to take a little bit of a brownish colour to create a little stalk. I'm just going to push on there like that. I'm going to create a second leaf, and I'm just going to paint a little bit onto my leaf. Go down the middle and just catch in the edges. Or you can put more of the edible dust on if you want, whichever you prefer to use. Now she just wants a little white flower. Again, just using a cutter now this time. And I'm just going to push each of my petals in a little bit further, just with my tool, just a little bit like that. And we'll just put a little line in each one, like so. I'm going to lift this in place and put it up near the top. I'm just going to push it in the centre a little bit with the bottom of one of my paintbrushes. And we're going to add a tiny bit of yellow into there. Just dropping the ball of yellow into the centre. So that's our second little Shopkins inspired cookie. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching. And remember to check out the other channels to see what they've made in this collaboration. You can click on the screen now, or you can also click on the links in the description box below.
If you liked this video and would like to see more, please click on the images of the other videos suggested. Also, please do subscribe to my channel using the button at the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can also visit my cake website and my Facebook page to see more cakes and ideas.